And Facebook, come on in. YouTube, thank you guys for being here today. Getting ready to start my show called Jimmy Rants. So come on in, make yourselves at home. Got a great one in store for you. I've been sitting on this one for a couple days now. Just didn't have time over the weekend to get to this one, but this is big news in the world of health. Real excited to talk about this one here today on Jimmy Rants. Hello, Kira, Hank, Norma. Thank you guys for being here. Come on in, you guys here on YouTube. Thank you for being here as well. We always have a really good time bringing an eclectic kind of cross-section of topics. In fact, somebody on YouTube just yesterday was like, wow, you like talk about a lot of different kinds of things. And yeah, I mean, I could have called this keto rants. I could have called it low-carb rants. I could have called it literally anything. But we called it Jimmy Rants so that I could literally talk about whatever I wanted to talk about. And sometimes it's about nutrition. Sometimes it's just about life stuff. Sometimes it's mindset. Yeah, we go all over the place. Hello, Rhonda, Tracy, Mars. Thank you guys for being here today. Marge, I love your username key. That's kind of cool. Pretty cool. So yeah, T-minus 3 minutes away, you guys. So thanks for here. I hope your week has started off right. Hello, Shirley. Thank you for being here always on my YouTube channel. Hello, Rosie. Thanks for being here as well. If you're just joining us, we're getting ready to start my show called Jimmy Rants. That is a show we do on Instagram Live. All right, cats, don't start that today. So we have an outdoor cat that we rescued over a decade ago, the little black tuxedo cat. I showed on camera before, and she is just like very distrustful of any other cats. And so whenever my other cat, Peaches, walks by her, she always hisses at her. And I'm like, really? We've been at this for a decade. Why are you still hissing? Hello, Thelma. Hello, Kira. So yeah, she does. She just hisses at him. She will scratch at the door to go back outside sometimes. So this morning I happened to open the door, and it was kind of sunny this morning and everything. So I let her out. And next thing I know, about 30 minutes later, it starts pouring down rain outside here in South Carolina. And I open the door, and little skunk is like, dude, let me back in. So I open the door. Come here, skunk. You want to go on camera? Want to go on camera? Come here. No? She'll sit there and stare at me like she wants to come to me, and then she never does. Hello, Bernice. Thanks for being here today. So thank you, YouTube Live. Thank you, Facebook Live. Thank you guys for being here. We're going to start my show called Jimmy Rants over on Instagram Live here in just about one more minute. But it's a good start to the week, you guys. I got a ton of things I want to talk about this week. Some of them are controversial, so get ready for that. And a lot of them, well, all of them, I try to be informational and, of course, bring my personality to it to make them as entertaining as possible as well. So I hope you're enjoying the Jimmy Rants episodes. I do try to put the information out there in a whole lot of different places so that people can access it wherever is most convenient for them. All right, well, let's get this show on the road, and we're going to start over here on Instagram. And here we go. Hello, you guys. Come on in. If you are watching this on my Instagram page, hop on over to Instagram TV. IGTV is where the fun begins with this show. Go check it out, you guys. Click on that little button right down there, and you'll go right to the Instagram Live. But yes, on IGTV, that's where they put all the past episodes now. So this is Jimmy Rants. Go check it out, you guys. JimmyRants.com is the website. And yeah, come engage live. I see a lot of my Facebook and YouTube and other followers have popped over to Instagram, so you can engage live right here. You got to go follow me. I'm at Living Low Carb Man, LIVINLOWCARBMAN. Once you are there, all these wonderful people coming in right now are going to engage live in the content. So thank you for being here today on Jimmy Rants. We also simulcast on my Facebook page. So thank you, Sam, and all the rest that are here watching right now live on my Facebook page. And then thanks to all you guys watching over on YouTube Live there, Shirley. Thanks for being here as well. If you missed the live, you can watch it on replay now on Instagram. As soon as it's over, Instagram has implemented this new format where you can just click on it right to go to your page, and the IGTV, it does the whole video. They don't just limit it to 15 minutes, it's the whole thing. So shocked me the other day when that happened. They didn't tell us that was happening. So go watch it on IGTV on replay. You can also watch it on replay at Jimmy Rants, and we throw it up over on YouTube as well. Type in a keyword Jimmy Rants, you will find the show. All right, guys, so you've heard me talk over the years all about our frustrations with the typical guidelines that are thrown out there as it relates to the dietary guidelines for Americans, and how flawed they are and how they're not really based on any science. I've done a few Jimmy Rants recently all about where they are purposely not even looking at a lot of the low-carb research that is out there. And there is a voluminous amount of research. And their argument for not looking at it is, well, we're not trying to treat any specific disease. It's just generally healthy principles, which is kind of bogus because low carb in general does offer general health benefits as well, preventative health types of benefits. They pretend like it's only to be used for weight loss and for other purposes and not for general health, which is stupid. It's like if it's the thing that's going to help you lose weight and help you improve a disease, would it not be also really good for the prevention of said diseases? I mean, even like logical common sense would tell you that. But we have long bemoaned here in the United States, the organization, the American Diabetes Association. Those of you who have diabetes, either type 1, which is the autoimmune condition, your pancreas no longer makes insulin. That makes you a type 1 diabetic. And so thus you need to take insulin in order to survive. If you don't have insulin, you would die. In that context. Type 2 diabetes, they have an impairment in that insulin, but not to the point where they become insulin dependent. And we got a whole bunch of type 2 diabetics. Well, for the longest time, the American Diabetes Association was stuck on stupid. Let's just put it that bluntly. This is Jimmy Rants. I love to be blunt sometimes. And they were stuck on stupid, telling people, oh yeah, eat all the carbs you want, just cover them up with insulin, which is ludicrous. If carbs are the instigator in why your diabetes gets worse, why, oh why, would you keep feeding yourself the very thing that's making your blood sugar get worse? And so, over the years, I've been in this business for 15 years trying to educate people about healthy low-carb nutrition, especially for those with type 2 diabetes. We see people from a clinical standpoint cure their diabetes. Now, I know people don't like having that C word thrown out there about chronic diseases, but in essence, if you start eating a low-carb, ketogenic, carnivore kind of diet, you're obviously eliminating all the culprit carbohydrates that would make your blood sugar go wackadoodle. And so thus, if you eat that way, you will see your blood sugar fall, your A1C levels fall. We've seen people go as like 13 on their A1C, which is way out of control type 2 diabetes, down to like 5.3, just by changing their diet to more of a low carbohydrate type of approach. And finally, after many years of wishing something would happen in the American Diabetes Association that would shift that paradigm, finally, something did happen last year. Did you hear about this, you guys? So last year, they got a new president at the American Diabetes Association. She has type 2 diabetes, and she helped improve it by eating a low-carb diet. So now we have the person who's in charge at the ADA not only being a witness to low-carb diets working for herself, but now she's got it in their official kind of statement on nutrition for people with diabetes. So this was huge news. It happened like right around the time I was leaving on sabbatical, so I was not able to do a Jimmy Rants about it at the time. But it was big news that this came out, and now we have this champion for low-carb diets in America at the head of one of the leading health organizations for people with diabetes, the American Diabetes Association. Well, because of that, Now we have a neighboring country who has decided to follow suit. Did you hear about this? Diabetes Canada, the Canadian Diabetes Association, has now joined the ADA in their full support of low-carb diets for diabetes. Can I tell you, I have been blogging since 2005, podcasting since 2006, pretty much on the front lines of activism in this space for a decade and a half. Never did I ever believe we would get to the point where low carb would be this accepted by some major health organization. The one I don't think we'll ever see in my lifetime is the American Heart Association. They are full bore, tried and true, think saturated fat is the reason you get heart disease. And so thus they're never going to embrace a low carb, high fat diet. I'm hopeful within the next 10 to 20 years that the dietary guidelines for Americans, not in 2020, but maybe by 2030, 2040, the dietary guidelines for Americans will reflect some kind of a low carbohydrate approach for people for general health. But now the American Diabetes Association has full bore put their support behind people doing a low carb diet. And now Diabetes Canada, as of just a few days ago, you guys, something's in the water during this quarantine that led them to go ahead and make this position statement all about low carb diets for adults with diabetes. So this is the pre-proof edition. They're going to get it published in the Canadian Journal of Medicine very soon. But Diabetes Canada has decided to release this full paper, and this is their official paper on low carb diets for people with diabetes that are adults. Carbohydrates are biomolecules that are available in the form of starches, sugars, and fiber. Evidence suggests that excess calorie intake or the overconsumption of refined carbohydrate are the major drivers of obesity and type 2 diabetes, while obesity is emerging as a challenge for people with type 1 diabetes. The Diabetes Canada 2018 Clinical Practice Guideline for the Prevention and Management of Diabetes in Canada emphasized that the importance of nutritionally balanced, calorie-reduced diets to achieve and maintain a healthier body weight, which can be achieved by several dietary patterns based on your preference and treatment. In the absence of any specific evidence on the macronutrient distribution, Diabetes Canada recommendations aligned with those of the official guidelines of Health Canada, which are just like the dietary guidelines here in America for the general population. They were recommending, you guys, 45% to 60% of the calories consumed by type 2 diabetics coming from carbohydrate. Can I just tell you, if you're in the space of diabetes management and diabetes care and trying to educate people about diabetes, how do you not pay attention to blood sugar rising as a direct result of eating carbohydrate, and especially refined carbohydrates? You can tell people to eat 45 to 60% carbohydrate. You've got to eat a lot of grains. You've got to eat a lot of starches. You've got to eat a lot of things that you shouldn't be putting in your mouth as a type 2 diabetic. No way, no how. How did they let it go on for so freaking long? And did you catch that? The reason they did that was it was promoted by Health Canada, which is just like the USDA dietary guidelines. And we heard from the USDA Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee recently that, oh, well, we're not going to look at low-carb diets because we're not treating any specific disease. Well, look what Diabetes Canada did. They were mimicking the equivalent of the dietary guidelines in Canada. Well, they say this is healthy. This is why looking at all the evidence matters. So what if a lot of the research into low-carb diets is treating obesity, is treating diabetes? So what if the dietary guidelines are then going to be the basis by which they determine what the right diet is for treating something like type 2 diabetes? Do you see how the interweb of all of this matters? It's why I come on Jamie Rants so often talking about this stuff, because quite frankly, there is a ripple effect when the dietary guidelines come out here in America, when Diabetes Canada is listening to Health Canada, and Health Canada puts out their guidelines, which just mimic what we do here in America. And they say, well, we based it on that because, well, it's obviously healthy. It's out there. Health Canada puts it out there. It's all interrelated. It's why we have to continue to hold their feet to the fire to do the right thing. Diabetes Canada's consensus recommendations of 45 to 60% carbohydrate was never intended to restrict the choices of individuals with diabetes to follow any dietary patterns below this level, nor their access to support healthcare practitioners. No, I don't buy that bullcrap. That is utter nonsense. If you put out there as a statement, the official statement from Diabetes Canada, that the healthy version of eating food should be 45 to 60% carbohydrate, guess what people are going to do? They're going to aim to eat that amount of carbohydrate because it's healthy. Now they're in retrospect saying, oh, well, we never intended for people to eat that many carbs. It could have very easily gone below that. But if you don't give them that instruction, how in the heck would they know that that's what they're supposed to do? This is the problem with a lot of the recommendations that are put out there. And I've seen it before where, well, just watch your calories. Well, what does that mean? Oh, be sure not to overeat fat. Well, what does that mean? Unless you give people some kind of a prescriptiveness about the advice, it leads to a convoluted interpretation of that. And in this case, they said 45 to 60% carbohydrates healthy. So why are you blaming the diabetic for not going below that? And especially with all the negative stuff put out there by the American Diabetes Association and I assume Diabetes Canada about going too low carb, too keto. Oh my God, you don't want those ketones. They're very unhealthy. They're trying to save face now that, well, we never intended to say that you can't go that low. When you and I both know that's exactly what they were saying. Rather, it reflected the absence of any convincing evidence for superiority of any particular dietary patterns for all adults with type 2 diabetes, but did indicate for people with type 1 diabetes small short-term studies that demonstrated lower carb could be an option. Okay, so they're claiming we didn't have the science. Fair enough. Actually not true, because a lot of the research of low-carb diets for diabetes control has been out there for a couple of decades now. I remember Eric Westman did a lot of the early research looking at specifically type 2 diabetes and how a low carbohydrate diet is ideal. And type 1 diabetes, same thing. Yes, they still have to take insulin, but they can lower their dependence on insulin very quickly simply by embracing a carbohydrate restricted diet, which should tell Diabetes Canada, that should have been their clue. If a type 1 diabetic gets benefit by eating a low carb diet because they don't have to shoot as much insulin, does you by extrapolation that if the type 2 diabetic lowers their amount of carbohydrate, they still make enough insulin, but maybe lowering the carbs lowers the glycemic load in their body so the insulin can pump out enough to make sure it's in a healthy range with blood sugar. This is the thing. They're so trying to save face now, acting like, well, we never intended. We were just trying to protect ourselves because the evidence simply was not there. Oh, bull funky. The evidence has been there for a couple of decades, and in the 2 decades since, we have had study after study after study after study that a ketogenic low-carb diet is a well-known fact helping with someone with type 2 and type 1 diabetes. We've known that. This is not new. So for them to come out now, well, the evidence has finally come in. No, the evidence has been there all along. You just didn't pay attention to it. I'm not going to let them have revisionist history on this, you guys. The fact is, we've had this research for a very long time. So since the completion of our last literature review in 2017, organizations like Diabetes Australia, Diabetes UK, and the American Diabetes Association, in conjunction with the European Association for the Study of Diabetes, have all developed position papers and recommendations regarding a low-carb diet for people with diabetes. Several consistent themes have emerged. All of them have concluded that a low-carb diet, which they define as 130 grams or less. 130 is a little bit high to call low. I would call 130 lower. Once you get below 100 grams, that's probably low. And then once you get below 50 grams, that's low carb ketogenic. So that's kind of the distinction there. And some of us need to go much lower than 50. But to call that a low carb diet, it's kind of pushing it a little bit. But lower carb for sure. Or equivalent to 45% of your energy coming from carbohydrates. But especially very low carb diets, which they say are under 50 grams, I would agree with that, can be safe and effective in managing your weight, lowering your A1C with people with type 2 diabetes over the short term. So they looked at a bunch of studies, all these diabetes groups all over the world. They looked at diabetes control, the blood sugar control over a period of 3 months, and they found that lower carb and ketogenic levels of very low carb did lower your A1C. However, these diets may not have a long-term advantage. Okay, there's ample evidence online that a lot of people that have type 2 diabetes for much longer than 3 months see a sustained lowering of their A1C and other benefits. What's funny to me is if you see a trend line going down, 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 down when it comes to A1C levels and a steady decrease in blood sugar to a healthy level over 3 months, why would you think it would just suddenly stop working after the 3 months? I've never understood this argument when they're like, well, data only shows us, the studies only show us up to 3 months. They may not have that long-term effect. Well, screw that. If you do a trend line and you take a statistical analysis, and you mathematicians out there, you can definitely do this. If you show a trend line, you can continue the line to see where it would go previous data. They're acting like suddenly on 3 months and a day, your A1C is going to jack back up again eating a very low carb diet. No, why would it? Does that make any sense at all? That's what they're thinking. Overall, it's suggested that an individualized approach to reducing carbohydrate intake may be integrated into a variety of eating patterns. That is called bioindividuality. It's something I've been calling for in the dietary guidelines for Americans. We need to respect and honor that we are all different. We don't come at this from the same metabolism. We don't come at this with the same needs. We don't come at this with a lot of things because we're different. And recognizing that bioindividuality and doing something about it is so critical if we're going to make changes. And so I love that they're now finally recognizing that we're not all a bunch of lemmings and you can't just have a one-size-fits-all approach that's going to help people control their type 2 diabetes. You just can't. And it's never been true, and it's never been true about managing weight. It's never been true about managing any part of your health. We need to customize and help people figure out how to figure out basic principles to get to that customization that is individualized for that person. Diabetes Canada develops position statements to address issues that are important for people living with diabetes or to healthcare providers where there is insufficient data to perform a systematic review and no high level of evidence. This position statement has been developed in response to all the emerging evidence, a shift in international consensus about lower carb diets, and to provide important clarification for people living with diabetes as well as to healthcare providers. In particular, we hope that this update will facilitate effective engagement with multidisciplinary teams, avoid any interprofessional tensions, and to clearly identify key safety issues and clinical monitoring requirements. You know what this is? A lot of patients are already using a lower carb, low carb type of approach with their patients. And because they've been using those, sometimes they are looked at with an evil eye. Oh my gosh, like, why would you be doing that? That's not approved by Diabetes Canada. And so they're feeling a little bit ostracized because of that. Now they're saying, okay, we see the veracity. Thank you for showing us the data. Now we're going to put out a position paper all about low carb diets. So they took a look at the role low carb, which would be 51 to 130 grams of carbs a day, as well as very low carb, under 50 grams a day, in the management of people dealing with type 1 and type 2 diabetes. And they try to provide practical recommendations to patients and practitioners regarding the utilization of low-carb dietary patterns. I'm glad they're doing this, but here's a little bit of my concern. You've got old school diabetes educators in the form of dietitians. Guys, the dietitians in Canada are ruthless. They're pretty bad in Australia too. We think they're bad here in America, but they're nothing like the ones in Australia and Canada. Dietitians think they hung the moon when it comes to everything diet in those countries. And so now that Diabetes Canada has come out with this statement, they're like, they don't have a boogeyman anymore. They can't go after, well, Diabetes Canada says 45 to 60% carbs, so you type 2 diabetic need to be eating that much. And that's part of the problem. How do you get those people to change after all these years of vilifying low-carb diets? And the same with the medical doctors. Oh my gosh, you need to be eating lots of carbs is what the Diabetes Canada says. And now suddenly you're going to make them have to go, oops, that was wrong. Oops. It's going to have a ripple effect throughout their medical and nutrition fields there in Canada. To which I say, good. About time we start shaking up the paradigm that has dominated diabetes management and diabetes care for far too long. Those people don't deserve to have to deal with outdated information. And what they've been promoting is very outdated. All right, so leveraging the search methods for the 2018 guidelines that they had, this new position statement utilized a targeted approach from existing databases. They looked up keywords like low carb and keto from searches developed by health science librarians. They looked all across the databases looking for all the citations, the evidence, everything that would support a low-carb ketogenic type of approach. And so what they found for type 1 diabetes, let's start there. So they found a couple of studies that looked at low-carb diets. So they go over all the research. I'll definitely tell you, you can look up this journal pre-proof. It's called Diabetes Canada Position Statement on Low Carbohydrate Diets for Adults with Diabetes, a Rapid Review. Like I said, it's supposed to be published in the Canadian Journal of Medicine very soon. And I don't want to go through all the studies, but just suffice it to say they found support for people with type 1 diabetes using a low-carb diet. And they go through all of those. They also looked at very low-carb ketogenic types of diets and found support for type 1 diabetes. The main point is it helped them not have to use as much insulin when they're controlling their blood sugar. Which when you're a type 1, there's two issues. Hyperglycemia, where the blood sugar goes way out of control high, and you have to bring it down with an appropriate bolus insulin to bring it down. And then hypoglycemia, where the blood sugar goes too low and you've got to fast acting get it back up again. So that's the issues type 1 diabetics deal with. The insulin pump does help those type 1 diabetics to control that a little better. Obviously, continuous glucose monitors also let them keep an eye on what their blood sugar is doing. Type 1s, God bless you. That is a tough road to go. I know a bunch of type 1 diabetes friends, and they are, especially that eat low carb, and they are vigilant about making sure that they stay on top of it. Type 2s is a whole nother story. So they also looked at low carb diets and very low carb diets. And again, they went over all that research. I don't want to go over it all here because for the sake of time, it's just a ton of research that is out there. They took a look at all of these and they found, lo and behold, when you cut down the very thing that's raising the blood sugar, it doesn't raise blood sugar as much. Who knew? I'm like, who didn't know when you ate a food that turned to sugar in the body that it was going to raise blood sugar? Like, this is like almost self-evident. Why does it have to be stated out loud that if you eat carbohydrate, whether it's simple carb, complex carb, whatever, it's going to turn to sugar in the body. And if it turns to sugar in the body, that's going to thus raise your blood sugar. And if you have an impaired insulin because you've raised your blood sugar and the insulin pounds it down. Raise your blood sugar, insulin pounds it down. After a while, the insulin goes, la, 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 I'm tired. And it gives up, and that's when you start having insulin resistance, and you start having where the insulin does not respond as well to the blood sugar. And thus it has to pump out more and more and more insulin. And when that happens over a period of time, the body is all whacked. And so low carbohydrate diets, very low carb ketogenic diets, both of which can be helpful, is what they're saying in this paper. They did say that there's some uncertainties. It is unclear what the precise mechanism underlying the benefits of low or very low carb diets for lowering A1C, reducing weight, and the need for anti-hyperglycemic therapies like drugs, like metformin and other drugs, since it's difficult to design a well-controlled study which is easily translated in the real world. Come on. Come on. That is not an uncertainty. We don't know why people lose weight. We don't know why their A1C comes down, their blood sugar comes down, their need for insulin comes down. Whoa, this is a conundrum. It's a paradox. It's a paradox under the old paradigm. This is why thinking everything about diabetes control is about losing weight. It's about low calories. It is not. What it's about is controlling the very thing that's raising blood sugar, that's making you pack on pounds, carbohydrate that turns to sugar in the body, and uncontrolled blood sugar. I don't know why they think that is an uncertainty, but that's what they're saying. Lack of persistence, high discontinuation rates, and missing data are common challenges in these dietary studies. Okay, don't get me started on the challenges that come from nutritional health studies, especially the ones where they say meat causes. I'm like, did all they eat is meat? Oh no, they had meat and they had the hamburger bun and they had French fries. Okay, how do you know it was the meat that did? Well, that was the preponderance of what was in their diet. And Okay, but if you're going to say meat caused and they eat anything else but meat, you can't say meat caused. You can say meat and these other crappy carbs caused, but you can't say meat caused. But they do it every friggin' time in the research. So let's not pretend like the challenges that come from nutritional health studies looking at low carb and ketogenic diets as it relates to type 2 diabetes control is a new challenge. All nutritional health studies have challenges like that, have confounding variables like that. So it's interesting they list that as an uncertainty. Because of the limitation of short-term data, it is uncertain whether improvements in the glycemic control and weight seen using these low-carb diet approaches will be maintained long-term or will translate into reductions in diabetes complications, cardiovascular disease, or mortality. I can answer that one. Why wouldn't it? If you're putting your body in a less glycemic state, which when you lower the amount of carbs, there's not as much sugar flowing around in your blood. And thus your need for insulin also goes down. It controls a lot of the inflammatory pathways, which would then lead to chronic disease. So when inflammation goes lower, you eliminate chronic disease risk. You increase longevity. I mean, they're pulling this stuff out of their keister thinking, oh my God, we don't know beyond 3 months what's going to happen. Come on. Now I get it. Maybe this is a CYA. Let's just ease into the low carb discussion because we don't want to make it look like it's so dramatic. But to pretend like, well, we don't know what's going to happen. Oh my God. Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. Just do a quick little Google search of type 2 diabetes, low carb, type 2 diabetes, keto. You'll find a lot of groups out there who will brag all about how long a low carb ketogenic diet has helped them control their diabetes. It's out there, guys. Sustainability is another quick question. Since lack of persistence has been reported, why would you not stay on a ketogenic low-carb diet if you're getting benefit and you're enjoying it? I don't know anybody that enjoys a low-calorie, low-fat diet, but there's plenty of people that do enjoy the foods you get to enjoy on a low-carb, high-fat ketogenic diet. A lot of people. But they're pretending like, oh my God, well, sustainability, people drop out of this diet. They probably drop out of it because they're not getting the adequate support from said dietitians that I mentioned earlier, from doctors, and from groups like Diabetes Canada, who's supposed to be helping them with this. I wonder now that they're now putting a position paper out in favor of it, that they're finally going to get the support that will help make them successful. Let's not pretend like this is in a bubble. This was in a very hostile world, anti-low carb, anti-keto, and people still did it and still saw results. So let's stop pretending like those results won't continue now that they're going to be getting the support that they need. So they offer some cautions and safety about these diets. Anti-hyperglycemic therapy, so reductions in anti-hyperglycemic therapies were reported in both type 1 and type 2 diabetes with carbohydrate restrictions. Thus, insulin or other doses may need to be reduced or discontinued to avoid hypoglycemia. I agree. If you have type 2 diabetes that's way out of control, and I'll define that as anything 7.0 or higher on your A1C, that's out of control diabetes. I know they'll say 7.0, oh, you're okay. No, you're not. You're way out of control at that point. Anything 7.0 or higher on A1C, you need to seek medical attention from somebody that knows what they're doing, from somebody who understands carbohydrate restricted diets. Because if you don't, you could see rapid need for insulin and medications to go away. I remember talking to Eric Westman, Dr. Eric Westman, he's at Duke University in Durham, North Carolina, and he told me one time he had a diabetic, type 2 diabetic, come into his clinic, and they came in with way out of control diabetes, and they were on 200 units of insulin. I'm not kidding you. 200. Now keep in mind, type 2 diabetic was eating so many carbs that 200 units of insulin. I want that to sink in a little bit. Within 1 day of going keto, 0. So we went from 200 units of insulin down to no insulin in just 1 day of going from however many carbs he was eating. I don't even want to fathom how many carbs he was eating, down to 20 grams. And going to 20 grams of carbs instantly got rid of all the insulin that he needed. This is how powerful it is. But they're saying it's a caution and a safety thing, and I agree with them. This is why you need to find a good doctor who can help you adjust the medications and adjust the insulin if you're on insulin appropriately as you go through this. I know Dr. Westman talks about in that first week or two, he's like basically seeing them on a daily basis. Okay, come back in. Let's see what's going on in the blood sugar and make sure you're not hypo. Okay, all right, let's take you off this drug. Let's take you off that drug. Let's lower this amount. Let's lower that amount until you get to the point where maybe you're off of all insulin. Maybe you're off of all of your diabetes medications. This is what happens. And so don't do it willy-nilly. I agree with them. You need to be careful with these drug therapies and other therapies to lower your blood sugar when you go. I remember one lady wrote me about a month and a half ago, right when I came back from sabbatical, and she said, man, this keto diet, I just feel so horrible all the time. I'm shaky, I'm irritable, I feel like something's off, and I test my blood sugar, and it's just gone crazy low. What in the world is going on? It was a 58, and I'm just like freaking out, and I said, call me. So I talked to her on the phone. It was on Instagram. I talked to her on the phone. I said, are you still taking any medications for your diabetes while you're doing keto? Oh yeah, I'm on metformin and I'm on this and I'm on that. I'm like, I'm not a doctor, but I'm going to suggest something that you talk to your doctor about. Call your doctor, tell him you're doing a low carb diet, and tell him that you think that the medications are pushing your blood sugar too low. So she does, and he says, okay, stop taking, various ones. And 2 days later, she writes me back and says, man, I feel so much better. I don't have any hypoglycemia anymore. I feel great. How did you know? I'm like, that had to be it, because keto doesn't make you feel like that. But medications that lower your blood sugar when you're doing keto can make you feel like that. Think about that for a second, guys. She was taking medications just to cover up the carbs she was eating in her diet. And when you take the carbs away, you can take the medicines away. And that works. And at least Canada is getting a clue. So then hypoglycemia is another caution and safety item. Some additional cautions may be needed around the detection and treatment of hypoglycemia. It's possible that low-carb diets may impair awareness of hypoglycemia, since some studies have found a reduced hormonal response to it. Another concern is related to the reduced effectiveness of glucagon in the treatment of hypoglycemia, inadequate hepatic glycogen stores. Thus, individuals using insulin following low-carb diets need alternative strategies to safely detect and manage hypoglycemia. The main thing with hypoglycemia, just make sure that when you start to feel it, you do something to bring it back up again so you don't stay there. Now, lower blood sugar than what you're used to does not mean you're hypoglycemic. Some people, they've had an average blood sugar of, say, 130, and then suddenly they're down in the 90s. Oh my gosh, I'm hypoglycemic. Lower does not mean you're hypoglycemic. Now, if you're symptomatic and you have those feelings of blah and all the things that I just mentioned with that one follower, then yeah, you may be experiencing that. But keep in mind, a ketogenic diet with the proper adjustment of medication should prevent that from happening. All right, next up, healthy nutrition, another caution and safety item as it relates to low carb and ketogenic diets. Healthy eating is much broader than simply macronutrient composition and healthy weight. It may be difficult to achieve the adequate dietary fiber on a carbohydrate restricted diet. Okay, this is a very popular argument. Oh, you need enough fiber, blah, blah, blah. Okay. There has not been great evidence that fiber is as big a deal as they've made it out to be. I want you to go look up this book called Fiber Menace. Fiber Menace. Konstantin Monastyrsky is the name of the author. I remember having him on the Live and La Vida Low Carb show. Very eccentric guy. It's hard to interview people like that sometimes, but he was very full of himself. But great book, Fiber Menace. Go look it up on Amazon. But wow, it just kind of talks about a lot of the things that we've heard about fiber really aren't as true as we think they are. Now, does that mean fiber has no beneficial factors whatsoever? No. I think it does help in a lot of ways. And for people that choose to eat plant matter, it can help feed the microbiome. I think it can do a lot of really good things, keep you regular, blah, blah, blah. But I think about the carnivore people, they don't eat any fiber at all. They basically just eat animal-based foods. So I don't think fiber is the be-all, end-all. So if that's a concern that it's not healthy because you have problems getting fiber, it's a bogus argument. Very little is known about the changes in micronutrients that people with diabetes have following a low-carb diet, but it might be worth noting that decreases in vitamin A and magnesium were observed in children with epilepsy on a very low-carb diet. Again, with the sick epileptic children. If you want vitamin A and you want magnesium, there are definitely animal-based foods that give you those things. Let's stop pretending like all of these micronutrients are bubble. Most of what you need when it comes to the micronutrition in your diet, and I wrote a whole book that includes like all the micronutrients and the vitamins and minerals called Real Food Keto, if you want to go look it up on Amazon. And in there we detail what all of these things are and what foods they're in that are very keto friendly. So let's not pretend like that, well, when you eat a low carb diet and you've got diabetes, you're going to be micronutrient deficient in vitamin A and magnesium. No, you won't. No, you won't. If you eat all kinds of diverse foods, a lot from the animal kingdom, you get all of those just fine. I think it's a straw man argument to say, well, you get deficiencies. No, you don't. No, you don't. Pay attention to the quality of fats and proteins replacing carbohydrates because these may mitigate concerns regarding fiber and micronutrients. So I agree you want to get the highest quality fat and protein that you can, which again, if you want the highest quality, most nutrient dense, most micronutrient dense foods on the planet, my friend Maria Emmerich and her husband Craig, they wrote a book called Keto. I'm throwing a bunch of book recommendations at you here today, but Keto, just go look it up. Keto, it's the name of the book, over on Amazon. A lot of you guys own it. And in there, they have a chart, you guys, of the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. Are blueberries in the top 20? No. Is chia seeds in the top 20? No. Is kale in the top 20? Nope, 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 nope. Guess what the whole top 20 of most nutrient-dense foods, in other words, you get the most bang nutritionally for your buck from these foods. The top 20 are all animal-based foods, mostly beef foods. Take that, vegans. Sorry to burst your bubble. All right, so let's look at the conclusion, and then I want to see what you guys have to say. The aim of this position statement was to examine and appraise the current literature in order to identify a rational and safe approach to the use of low-carb diets in people with diabetes informed by current evidence, and to offer practical recommendations to both patients and healthcare providers. They looked at a total of 33 relevant studies that examined this in both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. For people with type 1 diabetes, there's very little reliable data and major gaps which make it difficult to give a general recommendation. Significant improvements in outcomes for people with type 1 diabetes, lower A1C, reduced insulin requirement, less glucose variability, and weight loss have all been reported by individuals who ate a very low-carb diet. So, type 1 diabetic, it behooves you. Eat keto, eat low-carb. For people with type 2 diabetes, the current review indicates a low-carb diet may be effective for weight loss, improved glycemic control with a reduction in need for these anti-hyperglycemic therapies. Other similar dietary approaches may also be effective for weight loss and improving glycemic control, but they've not achieved this while also reducing the need for the therapy. So other things might work to improve your diabetes, but they don't totally get you off of your medications. Which, if I'm a doctor, I'm going to ask, okay, low carb does all the improvements in the markers, but then they come off the meds. But then, say, a traditional diabetes diet with the higher carb might improve those markers, but you got to stay on the drugs. Why don't we question why they're still on the drugs? We don't have a metformin deficiency. We don't. I mean, someone with any kind of common sense about them would go, whoa, whoa, whoa. How are these ketogenic low-carb eaters coming off of all their meds and seeing great improvements in their markers, and no other diet is producing that? This review further suggests that very low-carb diets may be superior to higher carb diets for improving glycemic control, body weight, and reducing the need for medications up to 12 months. Evidence is needed for longer-term benefits. Bullcrap on the longer term. If you controlled your diabetes to the point you did not need medications, and you lost weight and you improved your blood sugar over a period of 12 months, guess what? For 14, 15, 16 months, you're still going to be doing all those things. Let's again stop with the hyperbole of, well, 365 days plus one, they're suddenly going to get weight, suddenly have higher blood sugar. Nobody would think that. I get it, there's CYA, but come on. Let's give people good practical advice and not be so to the letter of the law here to pretend like everything's going to go south when it went really good for that 1 year. With current data, we're unable to determine whether the benefits of very low-carb diets, which include weight loss and A1C reduction, are specific to the macronutrient composition or associated differences in calorie intake. Who cares? If someone manipulates their macronutrient intake so that they spontaneously eat less food, why are we bemoaning that we don't know the mechanism by which weight reduction and A1C lowering is taking place? Why do we care how? We just know that it does. I get so tired of this kind of language of, well, we don't really know if it was the lowering of the carbs in the ketogenic state or if it was the reduction in the calories, because those things were simultaneous. So I can't really. You can't have one without the other. You lower your carbs, you get in a ketogenic state, you spontaneously intermittent fast, you're not as hungry, you spontaneously reduce the amount of calories you consume. I would say keto for the win. Put somebody on a low-fat, very high-carb diet, and let's see how well they do white-knuckling it, trying to lower their calories. To me, it's the cart before the horse. If you want to say, well, it's the calorie reduction, okay, fine. How did you get to the calorie reduction? Oh, a ketogenic diet made it just happen spontaneously? Good. Keto is the therapy. Why isn't this self-evident? Seems so obvious to me. Several methodological limitations exist in the literature to date, including non-adjustment for confounders, short-term follow-up of small-sized RCTs, along with relatively high rates of poor persistence. Okay, all of that is nonsense because all of that is the same in general nutrition studies. This is not unique to diabetes research. They're pretending like it is, and it's not. It's very indicative of very typical diabetes research. So, future directions, where are they going to go with this? While long-term studies of the safety and efficacy of low and very low-carb diets are very desirable, they may be difficult. Yeah, they're very expensive. Future research comparing dietary approaches should include people with type 1 diabetes and type 2, irrespective of their weight. I agree. A lot of the studies looking at low-carb versus low-fat diets, for example, their primary marker to judge is weight. And I mentioned this when I did my rant last week about the Kevin Hall study. It was primarily a plant-based low-fat diet versus an animal-based ketogenic diet. And the main marker they looked at was weight over a 2-week period. Well, that didn't really show you anything. Had he done the same study and looked at glycemic markers, he would have seen a whole nother story. So it does matter. In addition, we need to delineate the role of very low-carb diets versus low-carb diets in those with type 1 and type 2 diabetes. More research urgently required to examine what level of carbohydrate is best. I agree. And it may differ from person to person. That's the thing that's going to make it very difficult. So in the absence of clear trial evidence to support generalized recommendations and the positive results experienced by people on these low-carb and very low-carb diets, healthcare providers need to work as partners with individuals seeking to identify an optimal and sustainable dietary pattern that will fit their preference. Healthcare providers will need to recognize diverse approaches are required to address the complex challenges of diabetes and obesity, and they should strive to engage with their patients in supportive relationships which respect shared decision making. In other words, you come in as a type 2 diabetic and you say, Doc, I read this book called Keto Clarity. I want to try this ketogenic diet. The doc can't say, oh my God, oh, why would you do ketogenic? Oh my God. You know that's still going to happen. They can put out all the position papers they want, and these old codgers that have been doctors for decades are just going to hold true to what they've always done. And they're going to vilify low-carb diets. To which I say, if you live in Canada, and this position paper is very clear, and here in America, the ADA has a similar position paper about low-carb diets, take it to your doctor if he gives you a hard time about it. That's how we're going to change. But I have a feeling, yeah, you can try to change the paradigm here from the top, but until those people right there on the front lines of seeing patients, they change and give the support that they're calling for here, nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to change. All right, I think we've gone over most of the information. They have a wrap-up of the recommendations, but I've pretty much went over this. Let me do it quickly. Individuals with diabetes be supported in their habits. Good. Healthy low-carb diets can be considered as an eating plan for weight loss and diabetes control. Good. Healthcare providers support people with diabetes who want to go on a low-carb diet. Excellent. Individuals and their healthcare providers should be educated about the risk of diabetic ketoacidosis, which is a non sequitur when it comes to type 2 diabetes. Type 1, it is a concern, but not within the context of a ketogenic diet. Ketogenic in the form of nutritional ketosis is not the same as diabetic ketoacidosis. Very quickly, diabetic ketoacidosis. Type 1 diabetic can make no insulin at all. Their pancreas is petered out. No insulin production. They are very insulin dependent. They have to shoot themselves with insulin. Eats a very high carb diet, does not shoot themselves with insulin. Blood sugar goes extremely high, 240 plus, which forces the body to think it's starving. So it starts producing ketones at an extremely high level, much higher than nutritional ketosis, which is somewhere between like 1 and 4 in most people. This is 20 millimoles per liter, when it comes to diabetic ketoacidosis. So very high blood sugar, extraordinarily high blood ketones, that's diabetic ketoacidosis. Very serious, but it's not the same as nutritional ketosis. Finally, people with diabetes who begin a low-carb diet should seek support from a dietitian to enjoy a culturally appropriate, enjoyable, and sustainable plan. A dietitian proposed ways to modify carbohydrate intake and honor your values in this. Okay, that's the one part that I am most concerned about. These dietitians in Canada, guys, are ruthless. I get it. There's a few diamonds in the rough out there that will do things the right way, but will we see a radical shift to a low-carb diet when we know the Dietetics Association here in America and ostensibly there in Canada are bought and paid for by junk food companies? They can put all the statements they want out from Diabetes Canada, but if you've got special interests involved, how gung-ho are those dietitians going to be to recommend a low-carb diet to patients with type 2 diabetes? And remember, I did a story 3 or 4 weeks ago about some dietitians in Canada who said, "Oh, if you're down and depressed in quarantine because of this COVID-19 thing, eat all the carbs you want right now. Junk food, it's okay. Be kind to yourself." Remember, those are the same people that are now going to try to teach you about low-carb diets. How's that going to work? All right, let's see what you guys have to say. We're going to come to Instagram Live first, then over to Facebook Live, and when we have time, we'll go to YouTube Live. So thank you all for being here. JimmyRants.com is the website. Let's see what you guys have to say. Instagram has a fun platform. They really do. I love Instagram. Mom from Detroit makes me so angry that all my diabetes experts gave me advice that made my health worse. It took lay people like you to correct the bad information. Yeah. The problem is they have to rely on kind of the like a good old boy network. Well, the diabetes, we're only following what the dietary guidelines say, and then the dietary guide, well, we're only following what the American Heart is. Oh, we're only following, and so they're kind of passing the buck to each other when somebody needed to own this a long time ago. Heiser Hines says, Dr. Robert Lustig does not agree with your position on fiber. It's not my position on fiber. It's the position of a lot of very rational people looking at nutritional health. I get it. There's a lot of people out there in the health space that have all kinds of opinions, and opinions are like butts. We all have one, and some of them stink. I was led to believe that ketoers and low carbers and fasters were crazy. I'm proud to say that I've been in the crazy group for 2 years now. Well, good. Crazy and healthy now, so that's cool. Jim said, listening to your Keto Clarity book again. Thank you, from the UK. Yeah, the UK diabetes, oh, you guys have it. They have not quite embraced this low-carb diet thing yet. I feel bad for the people in the UK because there's a bunch of people with type 2 diabetes in the UK, sadly. Derek says, true, I was in the hospital in Niagara. I tried to go low carb. The dietitian said they could go part way, but no bacon. We still have to give you cereal. You just don't have to eat it. That's disgusting. Santiago said, I'm one of those diamonds. Good. Good, good, good. Keep being that diamond in the rough. All right, thank you, Instagram. Let's come over to my Facebook page. Hey guys, what's going on today? See what you have to say about this topic here today. It's good news. I hope you see that. All righty. Kira says, I told a friend of 30 years diabetes is reversible with a ketogenic diet. She was so shocked, verified it with her doc, and he said, yes, it can be reversible. She's now trying to get off of all medications. Why didn't the doc bring this up in the first place at the time of her diabetes diagnosis? A lot of medical doctors are frozen in fear because there are certain protocols in place and a lot of special interests in place that make it, if you start to promote things like ketogenic diets and low-carb diets, that they make it harder for you. And I've talked to many a doctor on my podcast over the years, and they say, yeah, you kind of get rewarded for putting patients on medications. You get rewarded for seeing their blood sugar come under control using said medications. And so it's sad to say that there's so many special interests in mind. The only special interest that I ever want a doctor to have is the patient's health. If the patient committed themselves to the special interest of making sure their patient was optimally healthy no matter what you do to get them there, we would not be having a lot of the chronic diseases we're dealing with. So I'm sorry that friend was not told that before you brought it up to them. But there is this chilling effect that's going through the medical system where a lot are just afraid to bring it up to their patients. And I will tell you this also, Kira, that a lot of the low-carb ketogenic doctors, when they recommend things like carbohydrate restriction when it comes to controlling type 2 diabetes, they have patients that are trying to get them. And so a lot of the patients are reporting them to the medical board. Oh, he told me not to take my diabetes medications anymore and to eat low carb. And they're having to be brought up on charges. That's not public knowledge. It's not out there greatly, but I can tell you at least a dozen doctors that I personally know of that have been investigated by the medical board because some patient said, oh, he took me off of my medications and put me on a diet, and they start to review them. So there is this chilling effect like nothing you've ever seen before behind the scenes. So don't think that the doctors are just purposely not telling them. If a patient asks about it and they answer, that's one thing. But for them to bring it up to the patient, it's a whole nother ballgame because you never know who's going to report you to the medical board. What do you have to do to lose, or what do you have to lose by trying low carb? The diabetes path only leads to cardiovascular disease, blindness, and amputations. Well, and I would say all of those things, cardiovascular disease and all the complications from diabetes and obesity, it's all a part of the same disease. This is what's missing in the discussion. We like to have type 2 diabetes, heart disease, obesity. We like to have all these convenient little categories for the exact same thing. And the same thing is insulin resistance. And the moment we start treating insulin resistance, all these other things go away and all the chronic diseases go away. And the best diet that we've seen for treating insulin resistance is a low-carb ketogenic diet. So it is funny how, and I get it, we've got all these organizations, American Diabetes Association, Diabetes Canada, American Heart Association, on and on and on. They're all trying to treat the same disease manifesting in different ways. They are. All right, thank you, Facebook. Let me pop over here to my YouTube channel. Running out of time, you guys. I can't believe I caught you live. Well, you did. Thanks for being here. It's nice to see some places are slowly opening up to low carb. Yeah, slowly but surely. All right, guys, so the good news, I hope you are going to soak in the news and you joined us late. Diabetes Canada is now on the low carb bandwagon. They are now fully recommending low carb and keto diets for the control of both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. So let's celebrate this, guys. The ADA here in America did it, and now Diabetes Canada. Hopefully this is a trend that goes worldwide. That's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. As always, you can engage live in the content right here on Instagram. I am at Living Low Carb Man, LIVINLOWCARBMAN. Once you are there, engage live in the content. At the end of the show, it is up on IGTV, so go check that out. We also throw them up, the past episodes, on JimmyRants.com, as well as over in archived form over on YouTube. Type in a keyword Jimmy Rants. You will find the show. So thanks so much for joining us here today on Jimmy Rants, and until next time, we'll see you then. Alrighty then. Download video, and we'll get to the IGTV here in a minute. Well, thank you guys for being here today. Appreciate you guys in attendance. I hope you enjoyed that. Spread the news, guys. Low carb for the control of diabetes. We've known about it forever. And now some of these big organizations that have great power in influencing patients dealing with this, they're starting to get with the program. So that's good. Very good news. All right, let me pop off of here for now. I don't know if I'm going to do another Jimmy. I have a ton of things to talk about. I think I have at least 15 stories I've printed out. I got to stop printing stories till I get through them. And some really interesting ones in there, very controversial ones as well. But we'll get to it all in due course. So thank you, Facebook Live. We'll see you again soon. Bye. Thank you, YouTube. See you later.